I want to bring Misty back into this conversation because, Misty, you and I were sitting together when the verdict came down, and we talked about whether or not it was actually sort of a cautionary tale about the federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York perhaps overcharging Combs and going for things that were a reach. And I wonder also whether today was a cautionary tale for the defense, putting out that lengthy PR video, trying to paint him in the best light and wash away all of the violence that he's been accused of. And even interestingly, raising this issue of him speaking, giving sort of class and sort of inspirational classes to men who might be interested in sort of his business advice. I wonder if that sort of backfired for them and whether this is a cautionary tale for both sides.
So I think you're right, Laura, and there were certain aspects of the defense presentation that really didn't make too much sense to me, like that video, which went back clips of Combs during times in his career and interfacing with his children. I understand the idea behind it because the whole defense argument relates to a few things. One, that this is a case of somebody who is being targeted. There is a focus on other cases and what those sentences were like in other Mann Act cases, which was by far the best argument for the defense. But in addition to that, there are mitigating factors relating to relationships with family, the fact that his mother is elderly, that he has contributed to the community. But there is a limit to how far that goes, Laura, before it becomes much more hubris than actually motivating the judge to make a decision in their favor. So it was a fine line. The other issue, from a defense perspective, is that in addition to taking accountability, in addition to remorse, you also always have to be aware that there is an appeal that is pending, that is right around the corner. And there needs to be a thought about whether or not something that's said in court could actually impact that appellate process. So to me, some of this was a bit heavy-handed on the defense end. I do think at the end of the day, when you're talking about just about 4 years, which is slightly less than what the lower end of what the probation department recommended, obviously a lot more than what he was looking for, this could have been a lot worse. Quite frankly, you could have been more up towards what the prosecution was looking for at 11. It truly could have gone either way. They're before a judge who's not been on the bench very long. There's not a lot of historical data about the way this judge rules in criminal cases. So all in all, he's in a spot that falls on the higher end of the guidelines for the Mann Act without taking into account all those aggravating factors that were presented before the court. So I think there is lessons to be learned on both sides.
Well, that's what's sort of interesting. He's a few months below, actually, where the probation department had recommended the range was, right? So the probation department says somewhere in the neighborhood of 5 to 7 years, and he comes down to 4. But yet he took such great pains, and obviously you and I are not in court. He took such great pains, according to at least our producers, to lay out all the violence. And I wonder, what do you think sort of tipped the scales in terms of him not going higher?
Well, I think it's twofold. So first of all, the defense had presented a lot of empirical data of other Mann Act cases in federal court and had shown many, many cases, I believe it's about 60, where there had been a downward departure, meaning less than what the guidelines recommend for cases where there were convictions of the Mann Act only. Remember, these judges, especially in federal court, don't work in a vacuum. They're looking at results of similar cases. That's the purpose for the guidelines. That's the purpose for looking at other sentences that have come down in the federal system. So all of that is being taken into consideration. And then, Laura, in addition to identifying what factors are going to be taken into consideration, which was that analysis we heard at the beginning about the guidelines, where this type of case falls, but what other things can matter, like violence, like drug use. The judge is also taking that remorse and rehabilitation aspect into consideration as well.
Misty, always appreciate your analysis and expertise as we walk through all of this.